Hello and welcome. My name is Astrid Rafflin-Pellows. I'm the Volunteer Services Manager at Volunteer Hospice of Clallam County. A little bit of history about our hospice. We were founded in 1978 by a nurse, Rose Crumb, and from the beginning, we functioned differently. We are sort of a unicorn in the hospice world. We are local, independent, and we offer nursing care without billing Medicare or any other insurance company or anybody at all. Our services are all free, and we have a lot of flexibility in the various programs we can offer. Such as this one, for example. The Soul Care program has several components. One of them is today's speaker series, but we also do monthly death cafes called Tea to Die For. They are informal, in-person gatherings to share thoughts on death and dying over coffee, tea, and cake. The next speaker series will be Wednesday, November 13. We have invited Christabeth Atwood from Vermont. She is a pastor for people who don't do church. Her talk called A Pastor for People Who Don't Do Church, Faith and Spirituality Beyond the Church Walls will address different spiritual and secular identities and how to meet people where they are to support them unconditionally. The details are on volunteerhospice.org under the Soul Care program. Today, I'm delighted to see you all here with Malynda Cress for today's talk. I will, in a short while, I will put 3 documents in the chat. I have emailed them about an hour and a half ago. I emailed them to all the people who had registered, and I will put them in the chat again. So now let me tell you a little bit about Malynda. Her background is a unique blend of traditional education, alternative healing practices, and personal experiences. They have shaped her path as an end-of-life educator, speaker, death doula, and advocate for the unresponsive dying. She was a certified hypnotherapist, a certified end-of-life doula, and a Usui Reiki Master, also trained in Karuna Reiki. She received a BA in psychology from the University of North Carolina, at Chapel Hill. A Spiritually Transformative Experience, SDE, over 30 years ago, a near-death experience, NDE, several years later, and the shared death experiences that followed awakened her passion to assist the unresponsive dying. Her current work was founded in the SDE with her father. She served as a hospice volunteer for over 10 years and encountered hundreds of SDE, as in shared death experiences, in this role, as well as with others finding their way to her. Her greatest teachers have been and continue to be unresponsive individuals and the light beings who have stayed with her since her near-death experience. Malynda's diverse background and experiences position her as a compassionate and holistic practitioner who has a unique understanding of the dying process and the spiritual dimensions of life and death. She is dedicated to educating other practitioners and anyone interested in how to provide emotional, spiritual, and practical support to create a dignified and seamless as possible transition. During this presentation, you will learn who are the unresponsive dying, how to help their transition be as seamless as possible, and how to be a mindful presence for unresponsive individuals. We will keep questions to the end, please, but you're welcome to put them in the chat at any time. However, if you have some misunderstanding about some terms that Malynda will use, please let us know in the chat right away. And now, without any further ado, Malynda Cress, it's a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Astrid. I really appreciate being a part of your speaker series. And I want to say my hat's off to you with this organization, how you've been able to be here so long, to start it out and continue and be such a big advantage to your community and to the country and to anyone who has found you. Your education. It's not just caring for the unresponsive, but it's the education of everyone of the dying. So thank you so much for that. And thank you all for coming today and having your precious time and energy. And for those that are listening today and will be listening in the future, I really appreciate your interest and curiosity in the unresponsive dying. So we shall begin. You have, if you look on the, I'm going to have my little sheet too, so I can tell you about the sheets that are printed there that Astrid made sure you had a copy of. It is about, first of all, you have my my internet, my email, all these electronic things, the email address. So if you have any questions about this after the phone is over, or this call is over, then go ahead, please, anytime, just give me an email and I'll text you back with it. Text and emails. I do get those all confused. Sorry about that. So we will be looking at who are the unresponsive dying. And it's very simple. What's on the paper is my definition. They're usually actively dying, and they're simply separating their essence from their body. Now, the essence is what I use. First of all, just to give you a little bit of terminology, I keep looking over here to the side because this is where I see all your faces, so I'll try to come back to center. But so I look at the physical and the non-physical. That's how I see, and I have a foot in both of these worlds. And then I look at the body and the essence. The body, we know what that is. Essence is more what some people would call the spirit, but it is what is within the body, and it's who you are. It's your personality. It's your likes and dislikes. It's all of that that is not in the physical. Think about an orange, and think about essential oils. Essential oils are just a condensation. Let's say that it's more of, just a concentration of what the orange was as a whole. You put it through if it's an orange, you put it through the juicer and you have orange juice. It is the essence of the orange. You no longer have the structure. You no longer have the actual orange, but you have all of the essence that was within that orange. So that's what I look as. The body is like the orange, and then the essence is like is the whole thing condensed into your essence. So I hope that kind of helps a little bit, if I could get that across. The next thing is, if you look at the list, and so the whole thing about the unresponsive, they're on the fast track of separating body from the physical, from the non-physical, the body from the essence. That's really what it is. And it's our job to help them do it as seamless as possible, to be there in what way they need you to be. So that's all we really need to know going forward on that, but I hope you'll understand the unresponsive far more after we've had this hour together. So if you look at the one list, it's about how to support a seamless as possible transition. There's really just 3 categories to remember about this. It's the environment. They need to have an environment that's conducive to them moving on, and a safe environment. They need to feel safe, like we all do. And then there is the stimulation of the body. We need to keep that to a very minimum. It's how to care for their body. And then the next is to minimize anchors. So the anchors is really something I get a pushback on from people. Exactly what is an anchor? It's something that holds them back. It's something that distracts them from going down the road that they're on. So we need to remove that as much as possible. And so you'll see the TVs, the memories, music, all of these things, if it's not the appropriate type or volume, it can be very distractive. But that, if you want to know more about that, one of the other PDFs here actually has an hour-long webinar where I go into all of these 3 areas with all of the subtitles of how to be there for them in the physical realm. So this is really just looking at the physical realm of how to be there. It is a game changer when people become unresponsive, usually slightly before that. Some people even weeks before. They'll start realizing what is now called the near-death awareness. And from that, they're already realizing that's when people say they may be hallucinating, but they're really having conversations with the other side, their loved ones. And to them, there's not a separation. It's like they're sitting right there in the room. It's not a memory. It is actually them communicating with them. Sometimes it's a memory, but a lot of times it's when they are with them. So that is really I would recommend looking at that one on the, it's on the one that says additional info. It has the link to the webinar that explains all of these physical things that you can do, how to make the room more comfortable, how to keep their body more comfortable, and how to keep the anchors to a minimum. And then the other is going to be your mindful presence. I'm not going to talk about that today. Again, that's in the, also there is an interview by Dr. Karen Wyatt. That goes into about more of the mindful presence and has just a minor introduction and then goes into some of the stories. But if you look at the mindful presence, there's one particular one, the last one, number 6. It is be the space where all is possible. If you think of anything out of all of this on this one page, that one sentence right there, pay attention to, meditate, take it in, play with it, see what comes up with you. It's layer on layer upon layer. And that is number 6, be the space where all is possible. When you're sitting with the unresponsive, the unresponsive, they are in a different world and they're leaving ours. They're going into the non-physical. Their essence is separating and they're becoming pure energy, no longer limited by the body. So our imagination is stretched to the limit and beyond. And trust me, I know that. I get stretched all the time. So if you can have that where your imagination is open, and we really, as adults, we don't really have that a lot anymore. We've kind of lost that. It's going through life. So if you can think about being the space where all is possible, that's when you can see what you don't believe. You'll see a little bit, like crack under the door, you'll see a little bit of light. And that'll be, maybe that's true. Maybe I'm not making that up. It's okay if you made it up. It's okay if you didn't make it up. Just have that space, and pretty soon it'll start happening more and more to where you can't deny it anymore. So that's the one thing I really ask whenever you're looking at this. And then the page also has definitions. What's the SDE, the NDE, the SDE, and websites, so you can learn more about those. So I'm going to put that aside. We're getting rid of all of the technical stuff so that we can get into the really good stuff. So the next, let me just make sure I have all of the things that we need to talk about before we start going into the story. So we'll be on the same page of it. So we do need to talk about the space, because that's how, like, I talk to them mind to mind, heart to heart, soul to soul. That is the type of connection that I make. And that only became possible after I had all of these, the SDEs, the NDEs, and the SDEs. And believe me, I questioned my sanity many, many times going through these things. It changed my life 100%. It changed who I was. It changed what my body was. Everything changed for me. And it was a long time and a difficult time, part of the road, of getting my body and my mind and my heart all together with a frequency where it would be able to hold this information and then to share this information. So I'm very glad that you guys are here to hear it. And I look forward to hearing your questions about it. So the space. The space is, everybody has heard probably back in the 60s, they used to call it the aura. And people could see the auras and that would tell them about their personalities. And so there were different things that it's been called. Then they started calling it the energy field. You have an energy field. And they say it goes, and again, there's lots of discussions of how big it is and how all that, and I don't get into that. They say if you stretch your hands out and it's at the tips of your fingers, that's usually an average size to your side, and then it goes above your head and under your feet. So you're like in a bubble or a sphere. And so that, I'm sorry, I'm just scrolling here to see everybody's faces. I'm just looking, trying to see who's here with me. Oh, I love the little dog there. Okay, so let me get back up here, get myself. There we go. Okay, so the space is it is your energy field, is what I call it. I also would like to think that that's your boundaries between what separates each person and what separates us from anything in the world that we're with. It's our space. And then Dirty Dancing, the movie Dirty Dancing, he says they were teaching this how to dance, and he says, my space, your space. So he's making it very evident that this is yours, this is mine. So that's one of the things that when I walk in, I'm very aware of my energy, that when I go in to be the mindful presence, if I have had a very difficult conversation right before I have to walk into the room with the unresponsive, I want to take that out, bring myself to front and center, and be only there for that unresponsive person and who is there with them, their family member, but mainly for the unresponsive. So when I start that, I find that I will say this is my essence and my spirit and my bubble, my sphere, my energy. This is theirs. When we come together, as we get closer and closer together, then we have an intersection here. We're not like this, but we have an intersection. In that intersection, that is where we meet and we speak. And it's by word, by feeling, by sensing. I also use the terminology, it was placed in my knowing. I receive it and I have no idea how I received it. It's just there and I know it. And it's not like it's a word or a sentence. It's like the whole story is just there all of a sudden. So it's very different. I never know what I'm going to step into. When we step into that intersection where our spaces are together, I step into their world. Whatever they are going through, I just step into it. And I might find them in a forest. I might find them in a little canoe going down the river, and I'm right there. And that's where we converse. So that gives you an idea. And I think it's time now that we kind of just get right into the stories. This I would like to also give you as a resource. I would like to read this to you. It's just a short little blip. It's from Joan Halifax. And if you probably know her, know of her, she's been in the dying arena for decades. She's all over the world, and she's written books. Hers started out with the dying, and then she has started going into more humanity things, not just staying with the dying, but she does so much for humanity and bringing us together as one instead of everything that's going on in the world right now. So I love her writings. So this is from her book. I think it was the first edition, 2009. It's called Being with Dying, Cultivating Compassion and Fearlessness in the Presence of Death. May my love for others flow boundlessly. May the power of loving kindness sustain me. May I find the inner resources to truly be able to give. May I remain in peace and let go of expectations. May I offer my care and presence unconditionally. May I offer love, knowing that I cannot control the course of life, suffering, or death. May I see my limits compassionately. May I accept things as they are. Before I go into a room that I feel and know in advance that this may be a difficult time, the family may be having a struggle with grief, whatever's going on, I will bring this up and I will read that to make the outside world go aside, and I'm centered and very focused on what I'm going into, and be there in the way they need me to be, not the way I think they want me to be, not the way that I think they should be. It's not about me. It is their death, not mine. With my shared death experience with my father, which was a very life-changing experience, through him, I was awakened by my passion, and I knew I wanted to be with the unresponsive dying from that time forward. But one of the big things he told me, and only a father could do this, he was a very authoritative man. And he looked at me with those stern eyes, and he's very active. He died within several hours of this. And I was there with him when he took his last breath. But as I was walking through him, as he was experiencing his final hours, And I'm like, oh, here, Dad, let me help you. You know, I've had this. I know what I'm doing. I've done it twice, right? I know what I'm doing, Dad. And he looked at me and he shut the curtains like a Broadway show used to be. It was the curtains. He shut it. I couldn't see, hear, or feel. He just shut me down. And then it was just made known to me that I was trying to tell him what to do and what I thought would help him. I was trying to be helpful. And we all know how that goes sometimes. So he opened the curtains and then we went again. And I did it one more time. He had to shut it again. And then that was it. I got it. But he shook that finger like he did many times when I was a little kid. And he had that stern look. He said, this is my death, not yours, not yours. And that comes back. And that is one of the big foundations of this. That is their death, not mine. I'm only here in the way that they need me to be. So, as Astrid likes to say, with no further ado, here we go with the stories. So I hope you find this very interesting. I hope it stretches you. I really do, because there's so much to learn. So I'm going to take a little drink. For the stories that I picked out for this, it was like they kind of lined themselves up and said, we want to go, we want to go. And okay. But I had a big stack. So I had to keep weeding out till I got something that was down to a certain amount. And so these have a reason for being here. I don't know why, but it's like they just jumped up and this is who they wanted to be here to let people know about their experience. So once I had all of them there, then I put them into categories like personality and about their life observations and their beliefs and perspectives. So the first topic we're going to start with is how you approach living is how you approach dying. Some people used to say, how you live is how you die. Very quick. I believe that. And I used to say that. But now it's more about, because people do change. That is the rule, but there are exceptions. It's so many exceptions to this that people can change once they have the final diagnosis, a terminal diagnosis, and people do change. But usually the rule is the personality, the beliefs, and the perspectives remain the same all the way through to what I call stepping through the doorway. That is when the last breath is taken. That is what I call it. To me, that's what it looks like. It looks like there's a doorway, it's wide open, and then they step through it. And another way to think about it, if you think about what is a doorway, it's just one small little area that it takes you from here to there. It connects things that are not the same, but are there for a reason. Like you have the door to your house that doorway takes you from outside to inside. In your house, the doorway takes you from the kitchen to the living room, from the bedroom to the bathroom, to the library. Every room is connected, and a doorway is what gets you from here to there. So that's why, to me, that's what it looks like and feels like. It's so small. It's such a small amount of time, and it would be nothing if there were no walls or anything to be. A doorway would not be necessary if it wasn't for how things were set up, the structure. But the doorway is very important, because if we didn't have a doorway, we couldn't get from here to there, because there'd just be walls and things that were boundaries. So here we go. This first one is about personality. Every one of these stories, you will be able to tell their personalities, because that is like talking to any person when you first meet them. You can get a real good sense of their personality after a while, after that conversation. So the first one is, and I will read these to you just so that I'll read and talk at the same time, really go through the same ones so that you can see how this works. The first one is a 34-year-old woman, and I entitled it Woman in the Bottle. So as I neared the patient's bed, and first, let me give you her diagnosis. This is helpful. Her diagnosis is alcoholic cirrhosis. So as I neared the patient's bed, she began to show me, and we really had other conversations, but she had asked to be sedated the whole time. She did not want to know anything about crossing over, about stepping through the doorway, going through the veil. She didn't want any part of that. She wanted to go and to just be there when she got there, and she would deal with that. So she showed herself swimming in a bottle, like a ship in a bottle, but it was the woman in the bottle. And that bottle would wash up on the shore of the other side. She would be arriving the way she left her life, numb. So that is her personality. That is how she approached life. Therefore, that's how she was approaching death. So it was her way of not wanting to participate. And it felt to me like life was very hard for her. She had a very difficult time. And this was her survival. This is the way she survived. And she didn't know really any other way. And so this is what she did with her dying. And I saw no judgment whatsoever of this. There was no judgment on the other side that I felt. Now, keep in mind, on the other side, I only feel just shortly after they're at the doorway. I don't go any further, so I can only see once they cross over and then maybe who's there waiting for them. And then that's as far as I can go or I can't come back. So I'm saying on the other side, she arrived there the same way she lived, numb. And then that brought to me, and as we're going, if you have any questions, write that down so that when we get to the questions, you can let me know. But this story didn't come up until just a few days ago that it wanted to share. I had not set it aside. But after reading this week, then this story popped in and I remembered it, that this was another gentleman very similar. He was a young man. He was in his early 30s. He was at hospice house. He was not actively dying. He was not unresponsive. So I usually can't hear them because people are so busy when you're participating in life and hectic. It's like a radio with static. I can't hear. But as soon as someone becomes unresponsive or late stage Alzheimer's, late stage any dementia, I usually can hear because they're no longer participating and there's not all of that activity going on. So this gentleman, the staff had asked me to go in, the hospice staff had asked me to go in and find out how we could possibly help him. He was very depressed. He would be laying in bed and just tears. The nurses would come in and tears were just running down his cheeks, but he would not talk to anyone. He didn't want to talk. He was just too traumatized to be able to speak. He didn't want to. It was too personal and he didn't want to. And so they said, if there's anything you can do, I'd never know. I said, I'll try, but I never know. So I went in and sat with him, and I don't talk. I don't use my voice. All of it's in my mind. It's all through I call it energetic communication. And that can come through hearing, seeing, feeling, touching, smelling, all these things. But it's energetic. And so when he was there sitting and I could see the tear, every once in a while, a tear would run down. His face just looked so heavy. His heart was he was just devastated. And so when I asked him, in my voice, I said, is there anything we can do to help you be more comfortable? Just let me know and we will find a way to try to help you, but we don't know what you need right now. And he had nothing to say. He acknowledged I was there. He was fine with me being there, but he really just didn't have anything to say. And so I just sat with him and just let his energy get used to mine and me adjust it to him to see that I wasn't there in any capacity other than just trying to be there for him and whatever he needed. And he finally showed me, he started showing me, he did not talk to me, but he finally started showing me that he was just so lost right now. He was just so lost.
Malynda, sorry,
Uh-huh.
Malynda.
Uh-huh. I can't hear you.
What is the diagnosis of this young man?
I don't remember because I don't have a sheet on him since he just popped up in the last couple of days.
Okay.
I don't remember what it was, but it had to do with alcoholism and substance abuse.
Wow.
So
Okay.
I think it was more substance abuse.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for asking that. Yes. So that's a big thing. That's why I was bringing it up after I did this story, then that's why it's connected to this. But I do believe his was more substance abuse. So he was just so distraught, but he started showing me. And so I asked him, I said, because I ask a lot, this is a question I use a lot. Right now, who would you like to be with you or where would you like to be? What would bring you what you need right now in this moment? And he started then showing me this, instead of just dark space, it started having things that were moving. And then I could see it was him. And then he told me, he said, I want to be with my buddies. And then the picture opened up and they were in a really, really bad room. The mattresses on the bed, it was dirty, it was filthy. The smell was just about to knock me over. It was very hard for me to just stay there with him. And he says, that's where I want to be right now. That's the only thing I find comfort in. And he said, I hate myself. I hate myself. I hate who I became. I hate the life that I made. And I can't do it anymore. So he hated, and I am used to feeling hate from people when they're unresponsive, if they're carrying things, but it's always been towards someone else. It's always been somebody else's fault, or they're mad at this person or that person because they did something. This young man took full responsibility for where he was. And he said, I hate myself. And he did. With all of his essence, I could feel the hate that he turned on himself. And then he said, I wasted my life. I wasted my life. And I sat there, and I'm just right now, all I know is for me to listen. That's all is for me to do. And then it was placed in my knowing. Just say this, let him know this. And it was, there is no waste in life. There is no life that is wasted. No life is wasted. And it continued to give me information. And I was told that, and these are the light beings, and this is really, it's my essence picking up the light beings, essence from the ones that have already passed. It's not just one thing that I receive information from. It's the golden white light that I was with in the near-death experience that shared a lot of things. So all of these come together and give me the information to help each and every one of the people that I'm with. And it said, there is no life that is a waste. And it's also said that there was no judgment on this. I could feel no judgment. And when I was in the near-death experience, there was no judgment on me. I had a lot of issues with judgment coming from my religious background and my family. And so I had a big thing about judgment. And it really helped so much to clear that out for me. But they told me to tell him also that with the no waste, it's like, it's not wasted because you may not see it, and anybody else in human form in a body right now may not be able to be aware of it. They may not have the capacity for it, but your soul has learned much by this life that you have lived. Sometimes we learn, don't we understand in the world, we understand sometimes, usually when it's something that hits us upside the head and it's something we learned the hard way. It wasn't the easy way. It wasn't like, oh, here's this, wonderful life. And I've learned that. Usually the ones that we go through, the ones that we would not consider gifts, but then when we look in hindsight, it was the biggest gift of our life. Me being in bed and having the near-death experience and having people wait on me for years and being in a wheelchair and all of that, I hated it during the time, but then it changed my life and it became the biggest gift in my life. So that was what was trying to be relayed to him. This life that you see as a waste, your soul has learned much. I saw him take that in. I saw a seed was planted, but he was still so lost in his anger of himself that I don't feel like it was going to be a sudden thing, but the seed was planted. That was my responsibility. That's all I can do. And it's up to him what he does with that seed. And so I just felt so for him, but yet after I left, I felt so much encouragement that he had that seed. He took full responsibility of his life. So that means he looks at it and he knows it's his life and his choices that had him where he was. And so I knew that he had a very good chance of figuring this out even before he left his body. If not, on the other side, he would realize and understand the broader picture of this life really helped his soul learn something that he could not have learned in any other way. So that was a big one. And I will let you take a little swallow of something, put your answers and your questions and anything that you want to remark about. Just put that down and then we'll move to the next one. Okay, So the next one is Miss V. She was 88 years old and her diagnosis was sepsis. I observed Miss V sitting in the driver's seat of a car with both hands tightly holding the steering wheel. I mean, like she could squeeze it in half. And her arms were outstretched, her elbows were straight. So she had all of her power and all of this on the steering wheel. And then her foot was pressing the brake pedal so hard, is like, wow, she's going to push it all the way through the car. And she was aggressively pushing it. And she let me know she was going to stay for as long as she could hold out. She was not going anywhere till she had to leave. Then it came in my mind, you're taking me out of here over my dead body. I'm like, okay, that's really funny. Okay. That is like, over my dead body, am I leaving this place? It was not that she was afraid. There was no fear. She had control. She wanted to control. She was going to go when she wanted to go, how she wanted to go, and she did not like being told how to do it. That is her personality, the way she approached life. This is how she's approaching her dying. So she was just there, like, no, I am here, and they can't make me go until that body dies. And when the body dies, I'll leave. And so that's what she was doing. No unfinished business. It was just her way of dealing with things, her approach in general. So that'll be it for that one. So we'll let that energy, I'm kind of just going to move that energy aside, and we're going to the next one. This one is the one that really was one of the first ones that shocked me, that I really did not have a clue that this was coming. This is a 91-year-old woman, diagnosis, respiratory failure. Even from a short distance, the patient appeared younger than her years. Her skin appeared soft, smooth, and supple. Her body was still very present in size, yet her breathing indicated otherwise. The room needed only minor tweaking for comfort. When asked if she had questions or needed anything, there was a curt response, no. Okay. Any wisdom about life you would like to share? I asked. Yes. Don't listen to any buffoons that think they know anything about life. And I'm like, okay, I'm really shocked. I never even thought of this being a response. So it took me a minute. I was really lost for words, and that's very unusual. Anybody who knows me knows that that doesn't happen very often. So I got myself back together. I kind of got together. I'm like, okay, pay attention to what we're doing. I said, okay, what would you tell those left behind about life? She said, in the good book, there are 10 laws. Listen to them. Okay. Anything else you'd like to add? Yes, get on with your business. And that was the end of the conversation and speaking to this woman. So imagine the type of person that she was. You can tell right there. She was curt, direct, and no sugarcoating. She was used to being very direct in life, and that's how she was dying. That's how we do. This is an important thing to know about the unresponsive. They're the person they were just hours ago or days ago when they were still active and still able to communicate. Same person. They're just going through this thing, and we are there to help them in whatever way they need. But this is important to realize. They're still a person, very much alive. They're still very much alive in there. It's just their body that's not working. So that's a big thing here, if we can get that across. And I think after all of these, you'll kind of get the idea. So now we're going to go into, that's enough for the personalities, because every single one of these stories, you will pick up their personalities. And if you like to write them, because I'm really not going to go through a lot of it, every one of them, to say exactly what my thought is on that. That's for you to pick up and use and see what you think. And then we can discuss that later at the end. So this life observation was from a 92-year-old woman. I found her rocking on the porch of her very old farmhouse. She gave a simple suggestion in how to deal with life. Sit on your porch and rock as people and scenery, which is a metaphor for situations in life in general, come and go. No need to get riled or sorrowful. It all passes. Get the best rocking chair you can and a porch with scenery that feeds your life. And that was her recommendation in life. To me, that told me what I needed to know. She did the okay. I get so much into this other world. Sometimes I have a hard time coming back to the words. She is the physical. When she says to get the chair, she says in her last sentence, get the best rocking chair you can and a porch with scenery that feeds your soul. The chair, the porch, that's the physical aspect. So she's saying she wants to be comfortable in life and then to feed your soul. That means that's the non-physical. She recognizes that there is a physical and non-physical. I'm sure that woman had a very strong knowing of who she was internally. She knew herself like a lot of people did not. And so she said, her thing, feed the soul and don't sweat the small stuff. So that would be my take on that. If you have a perspective or something you would add there, then I would like to hear that. I like to hear other perspectives. I only can come from what I know, my perspective. The next group that we'll be talking about is your beliefs and perspectives influence your life and death. That is different than saying you approach life the same way you approach death. We'll actually be looking at belief system and perspectives. And if it influences your life, it definitely influences your death. That's just a therefore. Okay, so the next one is the first one in this is an 80-year-old man. I'm very terrible at pronouncing this word. It's a medical word. Cerebral atherosclerosis. Okay, I'm glad that's over. He conveyed he feels bad about his choices in life. He is worried, ashamed, and feels his mother is disappointed in him. Now, this is an 81-year-old man, and he's laying here on his deathbed, and he feels that his mother is ashamed of him and disappointed in him. He summarizes with this sentence, I found out too late what was important in life. The space around us began to change. A woman was rushing to his bedside. His mother came to him with open arms, a loving heart, and embraced him with joy. He felt small, undeserving, and kept saying, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I let you down, Mom. I'm sorry. She said, not so, not so. My heart bursts with joy to see you. Your choice is for you, not for me. It will become clear to you soon. For now, just rest and be at peace in my arms. Feel my joy, my exhilaration being united with you. So look at the difference from the time I walked into his space and how he was just beside himself about worry and about being ashamed and his mother. And then as I'm leaving, he's resting in her arms. He's beginning to feel peace again that he has not felt for his adult life the way it sounds. And he feels her true joy. So imagine how he started out this way, and before he leaves his body, he's going to have that peace and rest he was looking for. So that, and this about grief, having these experiences, these shared death experiences, and if the family hears it, I've seen over and over, and in my own case, I was there when my mom died, I was there when my dad died, and to see what they were going through as they were dying, they definitely died as they lived, and it was beautiful. And there were so many things that were healed and so many things that were shared. And that, when he took his last breath and she took her last, of course, I'm mourning. The daughter is mourning, and I'll miss them. But the person here that just sat there with them and saw how they were leaving and where they were going and how they felt about it, I rejoiced. I rejoiced. I'm sitting there with tears, and they're tears of joy and they're tears of hurt and pain that I'll be losing them. I won't have them there anymore. But the tears of joy, to me, overwhelm far more the tears of sadness. So the grief was not near as deep, and it didn't take as long to process. Of course, I still miss them, and I still cry from time to time when something comes up, and I still laugh when something reminds me of them. But the grief, it helps you process the grief in a totally different way when you have this understanding if someone is there and you get to hear what's happening to them as they're leaving. We'll go to the next gentleman, and it's the same thing about your perspectives and your beliefs. Mr. L is 78 years old. His diagnosis is congestive heart failure. I was entering his space and immediately felt his heaviness of heart. It was made known he had closed off half of himself a long time ago, and it's felt like since the early, when he was just an early young man, it was an early adulthood, that he felt he need to make a choice between being responsibility and his passion. So there's a road in front of me, and he feels like it's forking, and he must make a decision. Do I take responsibility or do I go after my passion? And he took responsibility. And that was the heaviness in his heart. I asked if he had regrets for that choice, and he replied, "Regret is not the way I would put it. If it was before me again, I would choose differently." I understand that very deeply myself. So he has no regrets that he did that, but it's like if he knew then what he knows now, he would have made a different choice. He asked if I would stay a while longer. Time passed as we sat in silence. It was time for me to leave. There was a noticeable change in him. He was reuniting with his passion. So as I was leaving, I could feel just the ever slight, so much of him finding that passion that he hid and he stuffed down and was not a part of him. He hadn't felt in so long. And he was started opening up and allowing that passion to come back up. He was going to find his passion before he left that body. He was on that, he was right there. And so I feel very sure that he was going to find that passion and be able to take that over with him. So we will move on to the next. Are there any questions, Astrid, that we need anything about technical things or anything?
There is nothing technical. There is just a couple of questions about how those messages happen. So I can read them to you now if you'd like.
Oh, no, we'll wait till the end then so that we have them all together. Okay, so the next one, this is where then we'll look at when I'm with the unresponsive. Usually it's when I go, it's either because I was volunteering at hospice. And so that I went in every week. And then I went to wherever they said that I would be the most help. And so it wasn't just with unresponsive. I would also go with anyone that was available. And they two things usually, though, if I was going in to have a conversation with those that could not speak, they were asking me, what about the pain? We can't get their pain under control. Can you see or ask them, what can we do to help them about the pain? The other thing is, why are they not leaving? Why are they prolonging their agony? What is causing this? You know, and everybody talks about the unfinished business, or they're waiting for a wedding that's coming, or they're waiting for their birthday. I had a friend who died within a week of her 80th birthday. She wanted to be 80, and she lived another week, and then she died. She liked that being 80 years old. Her mother lived to be like 92 or 93. So she felt kind of bad that she only made it to 80, but she was, after a while, she was glad to make it to 80. So there are things that is just personal reasons of why they're there. And it has nothing to do with suffering. It has to do with their life and what they're looking at and what they want to take care of before they leave the body. But they're also wanting to clear out some things if possible. So this is what I step into whenever I go in about the pain. This first one about pain is, I entitled this Lightning Strike, like the lightning storm. This was an elderly woman. And I do not have the information, it's not important, of what her diagnosis was, or I just know that I remember she's elderly. And this was one of the rare times that the hospice doctor asked if I would go visit this patient to find out about the pain. If she's suffering, what's going on, what can we do about that? So I went in, and I went into her room, and the room was pretty well tweaked. It didn't need too much. There was just everything pretty much. So I did not have to work with the room when I stepped in with her. And as I got closer to her, her body appeared well nourished. Her skin was pale. And this is very different. She felt calm and present in her body. The unresponsive usually don't feel really present in their body. They're above it, in front of it, they're on the side, and they come and go, or there's so many different things. They're just not really still seated in their body. This woman was still very well dug into her body. And so I just sat there with her. She was a little skittish. So I didn't say anything, didn't really think anything. I was just like mindful presence and just sat and waited till she felt comfortable with me. And so when I felt like that she was there, I've started seeing she must have felt comfortable because she started showing me what was happening. And they did tell me that before I went in the room, the staff told me that she had an undiagnosable nervous system disorder. The doctor, she had gone for years, her whole adult life, she was in pain. And the doctors never could pinpoint what it was. They gave her painkillers to try to bring it to a level that it was tolerable. And so she lived her adult life with pain that was tolerable. And so I knew that much about her. And so when I sat down and she got a little more comfortable with me, she started showing me like lightning strikes. It would start at the back of her head, top of her head, front of her head, somewhere in her head. It would be like the lightning strike. And then it would just go down the side of her body, all the way down to her feet. And then it would go on the other side and it would do the same thing. And then it would go down her torso. And it was like watching lightning strikes inside her body. And it kind of looked like Christmas lights that go down like this. It's not solid. All of them aren't solid. They just kind of look like it's moving. And that's what it looked like, just lightning strikes and light moving in her body. In certain places where there would be a bigger, like a knot or a little light on that lightning strike, she would have a twitch. Her body would have a slight twitch, a small a jerk. And then she would have that, where the doctors look at where they have their eyebrows are all squished up showing pain. And so that's what had the staff so concerned, is that her body is showing so much pain. And so after I saw that, then I started speaking with her. She was calmer now. And so in my mind, I let her know that the doctors were concerned about her pain level. And they had asked that I talk to you to see if there's anything we can do to help you be more comfortable. And before I even finished the thought, I saw her shoulders almost right now, not her body, her energetic body, not her physical body. I watched her shoulders almost come up to her ears like this. And she said, "Don't take my pain. Please don't take my pain away. It's the only thing that has never left me. It's always been with me. It never left. If you take it away now, I'll be lost, afraid, and all alone. I don't know who I am or what to do without my pain. Please, please don't let them take it." She was begging me, and she was just getting so built up and so contracted. It's like, don't let them, please. I have to have my pain. It's the only thing that never left me. And so I had to try to calm her after that, because she was just getting more and more in a frenzy about it. And I said, that's okay. I said, once I talk to the doctor and let them know that you are comfortable where you're at, that you don't need them to change your pain meds, you are doing just fine. I said, that will make them happy to know you're okay. So I said, I will go let them know that, and then they will relax about your pain control. And she started just calming back down. She was still a little, because of her nervous system, she was very sensitive. She reacted real quick to anything, kind of like a deer in the headlights. And I think that's because her nervous system had been such a problem her adult life. So she responded quickly. She relaxed slowly. So I witnessed that, how her body just got so explosive. And then it was taking a lot longer for it to kind of settle down. But I stayed with her till I realized that she was okay. And she was more in touch with, it's like, okay, they're not going to take it away. We're okay. We're not going to take it away. So I went to the doctor, gave him the information. And, I'm not so sure the doctor believed me. You can always tell. Before all this happened to me, I probably wouldn't believe it either. So the doctor looked at it, and you could see there was really a little bit of relief in her face, because she had not left a stone unturned. When doctors come to me, they're desperate. And it's like, what have they got to lose? They've tried everything and there's nothing else. So it was like, it gave her permission to say, the woman is okay and there's nothing else I can do. I've done everything right. I've done nothing wrong, and she's okay. So that helped a lot right there. And think if the medical profession had the capacity, had the ability to have someone on staff or someone that can say, this is what is happening with them. So I'll just use this in a little place here to interject something that I would like to see. I don't know if it happened in my lifetime, But I would love to see that there's lots of people like me. It's that people can do this. And so I would love to see on staff or have it so that this person, you don't have to be in person. So people who can can talk to the unresponsive dying would be easy to contact just by phone or whatever. And have that as like, with hospice, you have your team. You have the doctor, the nurses, the CNA, the chaplain, the social worker. Why not have someone that can speak to the unresponsive so that they can say, once they have unresponsive and the needs have changed, what can you do? How can we help? That pretty much those that deal in the physical, they really can't help too much when they can't see the non-physical and even believe it's there or any of that. But the person who deals with the unresponsive and can do that can give them information then that will help everybody get a much broader view and be able to take care of the dying and a much broader main picture. So, okay, that's my advertisement for the day. So, okay, I'm going to take another moment here. If you want to take a moment just so you don't have to hear my voice all the time. This next section, I really like. It has a little more up feeling. It's prolonging their stay, no hurry, and waiting. Sometimes I just find them waiting. They have no idea why they're waiting. They've been told it's not time. It's not your time. So they're just waiting. So this one is another one. I entitled it Sitting on the Porch. Now I am in the South where it's hot. And so there's a lot of people at this age that's what they did was sat on their porch until it was cooler in the day. So I can relate to this since I grew up watching it and being in it. I walked into the setting of a hot summer afternoon with Miss B, rocking slowly on her porch while sipping on an ice-cold beverage. It had the looks and smell of root beer. To be out of the direct sunlight in the welcoming shade of the porch was too enticing to resist. A friend, close as any sister could be, came walking up from the distance. They had known each other since young girls. They rocked and talked, fully content during this lazy afternoon, waiting out the heat. This scene had been enjoyed on a regular basis for decades. No worries, no hurry. Did I see balloons go? In the background, I saw balloons on this one. Kelly? It looked like I saw balloons back there. Okay, unless I'm seeing something. Sorry. Okay, so this is her. It's enjoying the moment, which happens a lot of times. They're not in a hurry to leave because they want to enjoy those last few moments in this life. So enjoying the moment. I like that one. It feels good. Okay, so the next three will be, and I don't know how far along I am. Okay, so the next section, the next three will be about ALS. I have had the privilege, and I so consider it an honor and a privilege to be with 3 ALS people. The diagnosis, there is some connection, and I don't know what it is, but there is some pattern. There is something that is it's non-physical that connects with people through the ALS. One day I hope to find that out. But the first one is, this is a nonverbal, alert 74-year-old man. He has just come into hospice house for respite. So he is not actively dying, but I still could make contact with him, probably because he was not able to speak and communicate in the normal way. So his energy field would not be so noisy. I would be able to hear. So his eyes were closed and remained so for our visit. He seemed to be content and accepting of his situation. We conversed through thought. He conveyed that he still finds joy in living. And then these are his exact words. There is pleasure, beauty, and warmness in being. I became more through ALS. My heart flourished when my body could not. Wow, what do you say to that? There is pleasure, beauty, and warmness in being, and he finds joy in living. And he became more because of the ALS. That just speaks volumes to me. So if you have questions or anything there, jot those down. The next one is very different. This one again is ALS. And we have a friend that is with us today here on one of these little squares. She was the person that was a volunteer at the hospice place where this patient was at. This was a local author. She was in her 50s. I never met her. But this friend of mine came to me and said the facility is concerned with the pain level, the pain management. And also, why is she hanging around and suffering so? She was one of those, it's like, is there some unfinished business? Is there something we can do to help her move on? And so she talked to the daughter and to the best friend of this patient. And so they asked that whatever I would find out, that they would be made known of it. So I had my first encounter, and before I even got to her side, and I could tell that she was a force to be reckoned with. You know those people that when they walk in a room, I have arrived, and it's not them saying it, it is their energy that comes before them. They just packed such a punch with who they are. They live life and not on the side. They are life. So she was a force to be reckoned with. She lived her life boldly. So as I let her know that, and again, this was in the thought process, I let her know that I was there and that the facility was concerned about the pain. I went through all of that with her. And I said, and when I start sharing the story with people, is that okay if I share your story? Oh, absolutely. I mean, she's a writer. She's an author. Of course, that would be fine with her. But she said, absolutely, that would be great. She says, however, you must have the words right. It must be written the right way. So she made sure I wrote down word for word what she said. And now that would be an author, wouldn't it? A writer that wants to make sure she's not misquoted. So I shall read what she told me to write. This life has been an adventure, one I have enjoyed living. Now that it is coming to a close, I find myself in hesitation of leaving it. The fragrance of flowers, the touch of soft, youthful skin, even the grating of cheese across the blade hold my attention to the pleasures of this body. Hold my spirit to this place, enduring what must be endured to take in the last of these final moments. The medicine dulls my pleasures as it dulls the pain. This fleeting pain is worth these last miracles of living. Her energy changed slightly. She goes, I watched her body get very animated, and she goes, farewell, as I slip into my next costume and step upon my next stage. Farewell. It was like sitting in a Broadway show, and it was a Shakespeare thing. It's saying farewell, farewell. So she was dying exactly the way she was living, boldly, a force to be reckoned with. And she was staying because she wanted every single moment, even if it was painful. And this is one thing I've noticed with myself and with those with the shared death, the body recognizes the pain. But the essence, which is already so far, and the body is fading away, and they are so much more the essence than the body, that they acknowledge it, they know the body's in pain, but they are not concerned. That is not their focus. So they acknowledge, but they are not concerned about the pain. But the medical profession will see the body showing signs of pain because the body is experiencing, not the essence, but the body. You will see the twitching. You will see the forehead where it's like all scrunched up. You will see them struggling to breathe. That's the body only, not the essence. They are so busy with all of these things that they're doing that that's not in their sight anymore. So this friend, I let my friend know that had asked me to come and see this individual. And I told her, and she told the daughter, gave the message to the daughter. And the daughter was touched and very grateful to receive this message. And she said, that sounds just like her. The best friend was extremely grateful as well. And it felt to me like she was so happy to hear that her best friend was dying exactly the way she lived, on her terms and very boldly. And then my friend that had asked me to go see them. Then she came back to me and she said it was like a living memorial. A lot of the staff and the volunteers were coming back to see her, and the whole time she was there. And then they were also telling the family how wonderful it was to be here with her, to just have the honor to be with her. And that's when the friend said it was like a living memorial. To live such a life, why would she rush away from this beautiful, loving send-off? She was in no hurry. There were people giving her escalades. I mean, she was the, the what is that? The lead actress. She was the star of the show, and she loved it. So she was in no hurry to leave. And so everybody, that just kind of calmed everybody. She wasn't suffering. Her body was in pain, not her focus, and she was loving every minute of her life. Imagine if that was your loved one, what that would bring to you. That someone was telling you, even if you didn't believe it, it gave a little space in there for you to say, maybe she is okay. Maybe this is okay. Maybe she is enjoying her last few minutes. And anyone who knew this woman knew that she would push it to the limits. And then we're getting close to, are we doing pretty good on time, Astrid?
Yes, we're doing pretty good. We have quite a few questions and a couple of comments. So it's almost 1:10, so we would have about 20 minutes left.
Okay. So let me get to this one. I would love for you to have this last one. This one is also ALS. And it really amazes me. Humanity amazes me. And it's not when they're living that I get amazed. It's when they're dying that I'm like, wow, no wonder we're still around. Humanity has a chance to really come up and be what we were made to be. But this was a 34-year-old man with ALS. He was being brought in to the hospice house to be removed from life support the next day. He was accompanied by family, and this one I'll read so I make sure that I get the details. He was accompanied by family, with more arriving shortly thereafter. I did not plan on stopping by his room, as volunteers are not allowed during intake. I decided to check in with him from my location. With an energetic, upbeat voice, he immediately responded. We began to communicate through thought, feeling, and sensing. These are just some of the forms used in communication during the transitional process and beyond. I let him know I was hearing him clearly and distinctly. With a determined voice, he said, "Soon I will be free to move and do as I choose, as I want." I could feel that he was already savoring that moment of when he would be free. I acknowledged his soon to be freedom, no longer restricted to or limited by a physical body. He asked if I would come to meet him while still in physical form. Now, that's the first and only time I've ever been asked that. Now I know, after having what happened, I know why he did, but that was a very odd question. So, okay, lost my place here. Okay, so if I would come and see him in his physical form, one of the staff members allowed me to go in with her to see if family members needed anything so his wish could be fulfilled, because normally we're not allowed at intake. As soon as we arrived in the room, I was introduced to the family sitting around the table as the RNs were asking and answering questions and setting up his room. It was time for me to leave, but first his request of our face-to-face moment had to occur. His appearance and what followed were totally unexpected by me. He was sitting almost straight up in the bed as if in a chair. He had pillows around him to support him so he wouldn't fall over. His life force energy appeared very present in a seemingly healthy body. He looked healthy. He didn't look like anything was wrong. And his life force energy was so active. It was like little lights just twinkling. It was like he had stardust all around him. I hadn't seen that before either. And then I just looking at him, and I was just amazed. And I was trying to keep walking at the same time because I need to hurry up and get out of the room, with respect to what the nurses were doing. So I was trying to walk and look and take in all this information. And my thoughts were, he was handsome. He was a really fine looking young man, and he looked so healthy. My thoughts reached him immediately. The next thing I was aware of was his remark, "I know, right?" You see what he's saying? I'm saying, "That is a good looking man, drop dead gorgeous." And he says, "I know, right?" So, and he was chuckling and laughing so much because of, first of all, my embarrassment that he was picking up on my thoughts of like, yes, he's a very nice looking young man. That's not really something I go up and tell somebody. And my embarrassment of my thoughts, and then being at the same time, I'm trying not, he knew that I was trying not to chuckle and laugh because it was funny. He was just cracking up. And it was so funny. Before I could get out of the room where his family and all, and we're getting ready for tomorrow for when he was going to be off life support. So I left the room, I rushed back to the office space, and then we quickly reconnected just for appreciating that secret moment of humor. And then I realized he is a joker. You know, the people who like to play jokes on people and the jester and all of those things. He likes to get people to laugh and he likes people to make fun of themselves. And he had such a personality. And here it is. He's going to be off life support tomorrow, but he still has that personality so strong. So I was sitting there trying to get myself back to center, remembering I am here for him and whatever he needed. I needed to be the butt end of his joke, which was fine with me because it just really, it really brought it to home that he was gorgeous. He wasn't being arrogant. He was just joking with me because he could read my mind. He knew that would be an embarrassing thing. And yet it really brought him and me both to a place where we connected. And so then it was necessary to come back to the reality of tomorrow. He sensed my question, is he ready? He knew that I knew his grandfather and his uncle had died from ALS. He watched them as they died. This young man and his family know the toll that this disease takes on everyone. He finally began to share with me, and these are his words. I am ready to end their suffering. I would like to stay longer. There is experience in this state, one that is challenging, yet has rewards, although different and possibly judged as insignificant by others. It brings great accomplishment and contentment, touching the edge of pleasure and joy. Most have no reference of understanding how this can be, but some do. He tells his own story. So, do we have time for one more, or do we need to do questions?
Let's do question if you don't mind, because
Okay,
we have
that'd be
a
fine.
lot of questions here. So okay, so there's a question that goes back to how old were you when you realized you had this gift, or did you have the gift since a child? So
Oh, no, I was not one of those. No, I went into surgery. I was 37 years old and I went into surgery and I went in one person and came out another. And that's what started me on the track. That shifted me just, what is it, 160? I mean, it just shifted everything. My body was no longer, there was some response to something happened during the surgery that created issues. And so I ended up 5 years later, 5-year decline. And I learned what it is to have people that have to take care of you with your every need in a bath, brush your teeth, do your hair. I know what that is. And it took 5 years. So I could not even understand English. It sounded like a different language. So I know what it is to be in that bed and you're the one fading away and everybody else, they're losing one person. I lost everything, every relationship I had, the marriage, everything, my health, everything. I lost the love of my pets. All your relationships. So the person in that bed is going through so much. And then think about the ones left behind. So that's when, and then I had the near-death experience, which then that's when I started getting better. I died, I crossed over from that situation from the surgery. That was 5 years later. And then it took about 5 years getting back up. I still have things I have to watch about. I still have health issues from it, but I can do, as long as I stay within my parameters, I do very well. So that's how it happened. And then shared death experience awakened my passion, and here I am.
Yep. And so for those of us who are not as adept as you at walking in both worlds, how do we hear them and respond? Do we just trust ourselves and encourage ourselves to not have an agenda? Do we whisper with words just in our mind?
Good question. And that's something I'm really trying because before COVID and when my mom's health got so bad, and I've been on pause for over 5 years. This is my first presentation in over 5 years because of my mom just died last year. And so I've been working on that because so many people, as I was leaving 5 years ago, they're going, how can you teach me to do this? How do I do this? First of all, I would start out and let it be a step-by-step thing. The paper that, well, I don't have it here, it's back here. The paper that tells you physically how to take care of them, how to be there, the biggest thing, and you can't get their attention and really help them unless the environment is something that's not bothering them. The light, like their five senses are all upregulated. That's just part of dying. It becomes, let me also put in here, people who have sudden deaths die differently. It's not the same, not the same. And the one about the tunnels, a lot of times people see tunnels, a lot of times they don't. It seems more prevalent with people who have the sudden death. Although people who die just with, like I did, through an illness, and have a prolonged, they can see a tunnel. And the thing about the light, please don't tell people to go to the light. Not everybody has a light. If somebody would have told me that, I'd go, go, no, turn the other direction. I'm going the wrong direction. And it would stop them in their momentum. If they have momentum, we want to help their momentum as they go through the doorway. But if you say, go into the light, and they don't have a light, that's going to bother them. And if you say something about the tunnel and they don't have a tunnel, oops. So that's the kind of thing. It's like you can just say, first of all, I would say, do the physical things, get the room, the lighting, the smells. I'm going to pick this up.
Stimulation of the body, the minimum stimulation of the body.
Right. And the lighting is first, because that bothered me so much worse than anything, because they would leave that overhead light right over you. And that 15-watt bulb was all I could take for the longest time, 15 watts. And they had these big things so they could see. And it's like, use them when you have to, but turn them off. Don't leave them on. Indirect. Use a voice. Your voice needs to be like if you're talking to an infant. Quiet, calm, and all is well. It's like the well-being. You want them to feel that from you. And if they can't feel it from you if you don't have it. So you want to have that. That's how you help them. This mindful presence right there, that big thing, be the space where all is possible. All this on that one page. And I really ask that you look at the review, the interview and the webinar. The webinar goes really specific into this. The music can be a big bother, the volume and what type of it. I give you on this the link to the music that is free to download off the internet, so that you can play that in a loop. And it's beautiful. It's that I found that I looked for it for 10 years and I finally found it. And so I used to, as I was leaving hospice, when I went on pause, they had, I had made sure that they had a DVD player and had that so they could use it. If they had a family member, download it so they could use it. That is so helpful. All of these, if you just do the physical, that is forever wonderful. And then work at the same time on your own time, work on being a mindful presence. That's the next big thing. If you're calm and not thinking about the grocery list, because our minds like to wonder, if we're not used to meditating or being quiet, then it's hard to do that beside of them. And so they're going to sit there and listen to you go over your grocery list or what you told your husband last night. They're going to hear it. They do. So that was what I would say. And then from there, you might find out that you have some capacity, some ability you never were aware of. So check that out. Take it step by step.
Yep. And so there was a quick question here, why minimum stimulation? But I think you answered that on the sheet. You said that all five senses are upregulated.
Right.
So, there's limit your touching and limit your, the hanging on to the person, basically.
Right. Yes. And not touch it. If you don't touch them on the feet, the ground, what we do, like massages, and when people, like when we're living, they say you need to be grounded. And so you hold the feet and you do thing around the feet. They're not needing to be grounded. We need to stay, let them go and not touch the feet, because that's helping them stay. And we don't want to help them stay. They don't want us to help them stay. They want to go. That is what nature, and it's organic. Dying is an organic function. It is a part of life. It's like being birthing. We have to have help when we're born. There's all kind of medical stuff. We need help sometimes when we're leaving, but don't grab a hold of the feet. Go up to the top.
Yeah. And in one of the stories you said, I did not need to work with the room. So what does that mean? And can you give an example where you did have to work with the room?
most of the time I have to work with a room. And that's going back to these physical things about the light. I go in and, you know, people don't want to be depressed and the family is there and they want to make sure you have plenty of sunlight, and they'll be up there and they'll have the blinds wide open and they'll have, you know, opened up and just like pull them up so that there's no blinds whatsoever. Light is just beaming on this person. And if it was a 15-watt bulb, that's plenty of light. And so that's there, and they've got them sitting up, and they got music blaring, and they've got a flower sitting right beside of them. Okay, somebody walks in, and like if you've got coffee and it's real strong, they can smell the coffee. Some smells, and usually coffee's not a problem, but some foods, like if it's loud and it's something they can get very nauseated because their digestive system is not working. So they can get very nauseated from smells of food. That's not one of the big ones. The big one is light and sound. Also mouth cleaning, the sponges that they use can be flavored. Try really hard not to try to use those because it's usually like peppermint, wintergreen, and that's very strong. And the taste is upregulated. So it's like fireworks go off in your mouth when you stick something like that, and it has such a hard flavor. And people think that's a small thing, but when your essence is trying to leave your body, it stops them right there. It stops the momentum until that is rectified, and then they continue on. So that's doing the room. Bex fix the light, the flowers, the fragrance. People like no shampoos that smell really loud, no lotions, and definitely perfume is out of the question. Out of the question. Chemically, they become chemically sensitive to almost like even when they clean the room, that's an issue. But I know where they have to clean them with things. But all of that is a disturbance. It's a distraction to them. So to get the room, turn the TV off. There's really nothing on TV unless it plays the music that's appropriate. But to keep music in there, one thing too, I'll interject here is when you have a stagnant room, you use a fan to move the air so that it becomes more comfortable. Music is to energy as the fan is to a stagnant room. Music helps movement. And if you help them with music, keep the music going. If it's the appropriate music, appropriate volume, it will help their momentum and help them move. It's like walking into a stuffy room and then you open the door and it's fresh. So that's what I mean about work with the room. Almost always I had to tweak some little something. But after I was at that one hospice for a while, they got really good and they knew I was coming a certain day at a certain time. They made sure that those rooms that their windows were, their blinds were better, the light wasn't so bright. You know, they checked it before I came because they knew I'd say something.
So that was one of my questions also, like how did the hospice staff where you volunteered, you know, how did they know that? I mean, did you tell them or did they notice over time that, you know, you had those kind of communications with the patients?
It was over time, and I had to be very, very careful. The first hospice I was with, we had to split. We did not work well together because when they found out, and I don't tell, and a lot, I was just there with the unresponsive, not telling anybody, but someone that knew what I was doing, like my friends and that kind of thing. Other volunteers that knew that I could do that, but the staff I did not for the longest time. And then the staff started realizing that when I'm in the room, that it calms. Just my presence seems to calm the person. And I can be a very hyper person in regular life, but when I step in a room, it's like something just takes over and I just calm. I'm just there. And so they found that out. And then the ones I tried the first one and she seemed to be okay. And then she told someone else, one of the other staff that knew would be okay. And so it kind of went around that way. I did have some pushback by one of the doctors, but that doctor did come to me later and ask me to go see a patient. And so I don't know that she believed, but it did bring her some relief. So I was there as a last resort, you know, and I don't mind doing that. I don't care how I get there if I can be there for the unresponsive.
Yeah. And we have a couple of really nice comments also. So maybe I'll read from Roger Briggs. He mentioned, I was with my unresponsive as she was dying the last 24 hours. I was giving her morphine prescribed by hospice to ease her breathing. I left the room leaning over to her, saying it was okay to leave me. I had been a caregiver for 2 years, so she was clear to me on how disappointed about what she had become as a result of the delusion and hallucinations. I would assume that was in her. I would assume that was in her unresponsive mind at the end. A short time later, I went back into the room and she had stopped breathing, which is often how people maybe will choose to die when someone is not in the room.
Very true. They don't, sometimes they don't want you to remember them. That's the way they want to remember them. And some people, it is a very intimate, I consider it a very sacred, intimate time. And sometimes that person just wants to be alone because it is an internal journey. Nobody else is in there but her. That's her essence, her body. Now there's all kind of support, non-physical support. They're never alone. When they say they don't want to die alone, never, ever are we alone. Even living, we're not alone.
Right. And, you know, we just have a couple, 2-3 minutes left, but I kind of want maybe to open it up. I mean, for, you know, if anyone would like to say something, I have been reading the questions, but if you'd like to raise her hand in the reactions button, or if you just want to start talking, because we're not too many people here. So would anyone would like to say something? Don't be shy.
Can I ask a favor?
Yeah.
Dana, would you mind saying a few words? That is my friend that helped me with the one with ALS and asked me to go. Hi, Dana.
Hi. I just, I've heard some of your stories before, but I just get really emotional listening to some of these stories and how profound they are, and just how there's, having, been a hospice volunteer and also, having lost my mom a few years ago. It's just kind of mind blowing that there's so much going on that our physical senses don't pick up. And and just how expansive it is hearing these stories of what's really going on under the surface, and how we can really be of the best support, with people that are transitioning. And so, I don't know what else to say other than it's just profound work. And like, a lot of you listening, I wonder the same thing, like, how can I do that? And how can I tap in? And I think your suggestions were very practical about getting the physical setting in a good place where they're not being anchored and not being distracted by the physical senses. And then also just practicing being that mindful presence. I know, realizing that, people probably, years ago when I did a lot of my volunteering, where they were probably picking up on my grocery list, because oftentimes I was distracted and not really present when I was with people in their process, or not in the way that, I could have always been. So I just find it very inspiring, and I appreciate you being vulnerable with your sharing and opening up possibilities for those of us who, haven't been exposed to this.
Thank you, Dana.
And anyone else? Maybe, I think there's somebody who wants to say something. Here we go. Hi, Annie.
Hello, and thank you very much for your talk. I wonder, in your experience, this term, like unresponsive, is such a solid term. I helped my mother pass away, and she was at her deathbed with her last breaths, and I was whispering in her ear that we would be okay, that we were loved by her, all the good things and the gratitude. And because she was a Second World War survivor, the last minute before her last breath, I asked her to forgive all the people that did harm to her and her loved ones.
Oh, yes.
So she wouldn't encounter them again. I said, please forgive them so you don't encounter them in the future. And my question is, because physically she was at her last breaths, she was horizontal in her bed, but at the same time, when I said these words in her ear, she rose and sat on the bed and cried. And then she did her last breath and she passed away. So I am wondering how many levels of unresponsiveness there are, because the body was completely leaving. I mean, she was at the last moment at the door, let's say what you said, no, the metaphor of the door. And I'm wondering, what is your vision of these levels of unresponsiveness?
That is a good question. I can tell you what I feel like sometimes is happening is that, right before someone dies, sometimes they become very lucid. Dementia people can do that, and they've not been talking, they've been unresponsive, and then they'll have just a lucid moment, very coherent, and then they die. And that seems to be becoming more common, or we're just being able to know more about it. People are talking about it now. But I really do believe that there's not so much as there's unresponsive, but then there is it's like when someone's sleeping. Is it like the brain waves in this level or this level or this level? I can't really tell you the mechanics. I don't know that. But I do feel that they're unresponsive, and then they can be lucid, and then they can die right there. That does happen. That's just all I can tell you is that it does happen. Why or how, I don't know. I don't know the medical part of that. But when someone is unresponsive, they can see and hear things that are going on around them if they're focused on it. If they're not, they don't. But when I was there, when it was me in the bed, I knew what was going on. And some of the time, not all the time, because I stayed out of the body a lot of the time. So I don't see unresponsive as being a set thing. I guess that's it. And I don't have things, usually I don't have too much black and white. I have a lot of gray area. And so it might be this way today, but tomorrow we find out something else. And so we shift. We have stepping stones. We have those that we just move with it. So I hope that's the best I can really answer your question. I do believe it happens and that they are unresponsive and then they're not. But then what level are they unresponsive? It depends on where their focus is. And each person is different. Each person is different.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that Anne-Marie, you raised your hand. You have a question or a comment? Yeah, here you go.
Yes. Well, first of all, this is fascinating, and thank you so much. I love the way you conveyed these stories. It's like we're in the room with you there. So thank you very much for that. I was curious as to obviously being unresponsive and being actively dying is not always the same, right? So somebody can be unresponsive and not yet actively dying, and then somebody can be unresponsive and actively dying. And I'm doing my internship with therapeutic music from MHTP, the Music for Healing and Transition program. And I'm also a hospice volunteer for a few years. But with the actively dying, they tell us, to keep the music very low tones, very unstructured, and I guess like what you're saying really like kind of supports that in a way that I find very useful, because it's probably the type of music that's the most difficult to kind of get used to. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that, on music specifically in that phase. So sorry if that was a little long, but
Oh no, that's fine. Yes, and I would really recommend that you listen to the links that
I definitely.
because that music just really, it has an ebb and a flow. I stay away from, I'm really not as much on the lower tones. I like to go more like the upper tones, medium to upper, because that is a higher frequency. And so we're really trying to match the frequency, not a rhythm, but it's like when the ocean ebbs and flows, it's kind of like that. There's no like big and low, like a lot of our classical. I tried classical for the longest time with the unresponsive, and that didn't work because there was loud and soft and up and down. It was built to have emotion. It was built to tell a story. That's what music does. And so when I found this one online, it really just, it's like background music you don't even know is there. And you want it to be very, very soft. If someone was hard of hearing or deaf before they become unresponsive, then they can hear very well now. And so if we're still yelling or turning up things and thinking they're not hearing us, they are hearing us, and turn the volume down. If you can barely hear it, that's the volume. But I would say, since you're doing the music, which, oh, my hat is off to you, and thank you very much for what you're doing. It is very much needed. 5 or 6 years ago when I left, that was just starting to come around that people were doing that. So I thank you. But I would think about, it's more the energy that's within you and how you are feeling. Let that come out. You're the creative. You do music. I'm not really that kind of a creator. So if you have that, then let that flow through you and let it give you the music. That music that you'll be listening to on the stream, that was given from someone who had already died and was giving it to someone here that had had a near-death experience. I think it was. It's been so long since I read that. But he gave it to someone that would understand the music, and he brought it into the world. And so that music is really the up and down, around, but with no emotion. It has no emotional thing to it. And so listen to that, and then bring it into you and what you're learning as you're taking this information in from your school or wherever it is you take it. So bring that in and let it come from you. Let it be a part of you when you do it. And then you'll have it. You won't have to learn out here. You're learning the specifics of how to make it, but you'll have it inside. Be the mindful presence and be that music, and it'll come out just what you needed and what they need.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you again.
Well, there is a first to everything, and we've gone way over what we usually do. And I think it's a testimony of how powerful, what you told us, how much it's affecting us and how much we want to learn more. I really want to thank you, Malynda, for such a rich discussion and such a deep foray into what we don't know. This was really, really fascinating. So I want to thank everybody. Malynda, thank you very much again.
Thank you, Astrid.
Yeah.
And thank everybody too.
Yep. Thank you, everybody, for attending. We will do the next speaker series on November 13 at noon Pacific time. So for those of us who are interested, please register on the website. Thank you so much, and goodbye, everyone.